Keir Starmer government has done a U-turn. In the historic and horrific cases of sexual abuse and assault of thousands of children over many decades in the UK by gangs of men, mostly of Pakistani heritage, the UK government has finally ordered a national inquiry. See how the Starmer government went from saying no to a national inquiry to now saying yes.
This morning I met some of the victims and survivors of this scandal, and they were clear with me that they want action now, not the delay of a further inquiry. The J inquiry, the last national inquiry, was 7 years, which would take us with a further inquiry to 2031. I think action is what's required. I've looked at her report. I've considered that material. I think she's right, and that's why there'll be a national inquiry. It'll be a statutory inquiry. It'll go wherever it needs to go. So that's the position I've taken. From the position I was in 15 years ago to the position I'm in now, my focus is on the victims of this vile offence. And having asked Louise Casey to do that review, she's come up with her recommendation. I've now accepted it.
Here's what the child sexual assault and abuse scandal, or the so-called grooming gang scandal, is all about. Thousands of girls and young women were abused over several decades in towns and cities across England. Gangs of men, often from Pakistani backgrounds, targeted mostly white girls from disadvantaged backgrounds, some of whom lived in children's homes. The gangs operated in several English towns and cities, notably in Rotherham and Rochdale in the north, but also in Oxford and Bristol for almost 4 decades. Among the victims were girls as young as 10. Most victims were in the 11 to 16 years age group. They were given drugs and alcohol and subjected to brutal abuse by gangs of men. Listen to this whistleblower. She reveals how victims were not believed by authorities in most cases when they reported the crimes to them.
But the majority of the time, we were told that these children wouldn't make good witnesses, they wouldn't be believed, and that they were lying, because some of the stories that they were sharing were so horrifying, because I don't know what other word to use, that rather than believe there was a grain of truth in that, it was easier to say that they were being untruthful and it didn't happen. But yet, when we look now, those children, for a lot of them, that have actually gone to court to seek justice as young adults, their stories have now been proved true. So they weren't lying, they were always telling us the truth.
Here's the father of one of the victims of the rape gangs.
Social workers and the police, the ones who didn't protect her, the ones what I was screaming at, asking them to support me, because I held my hands up. It was so difficult at the time that I couldn't look after my own daughter. I was a single parent on my own, and social services got me suspended from work for trying to keep my daughter in the house. It was so difficult.
Now, coming back to the Starmer government, here's what led to the U-turn. It was December 2024. Elon Musk put fresh spotlight on the chilling crimes and demanded accountability.
In Britain, I kid you not, how can this be real? They are releasing convicted pedophiles from prison in order to put people in prison for Facebook posts. There were, and this is I'm simply stating a fact, there were migrant rape gangs in England that would run around and prey on young girls, gang rape them, and some people found that objectionable, which obviously it should be objectionable, and they were upset about that, and so they complained about it online and were sent to prison. That sounds crazy.
He asked tough questions of the Starmer government. He accused Starmer of failing to prosecute the rapists effectively during his tenure as head of the Crown Prosecution Service, or CPS, from 2008 to 2013. He criticized Starmer for not supporting a national inquiry into these crimes, even after local officials in Oldham requested one, and even though there was evidence of sexual exploitation of girls under 18 by groups of men. While Keir Starmer had pushed back against the criticism then, a fresh public debate around the case had become too big for his government to ignore. So in January, the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary commissioned a national audit of child sexual exploitation and abuse by rape gangs in the UK. The audit was formally launched in February. British Parliament Baroness Louise Casey was asked to lead it. She was specifically asked to analyze the scale, nature and characteristics of the crimes committed, examine the drivers including the role of ethnicity and culture, and review the response of local and national authorities. The findings in her report are damning. Here's what the audit found. Flaws in data collection. It says this means it is not possible to assess the scale of the crimes committed. UK police and councils deliberately concealed the ethnicity of the perpetrators to avoid appearing racist. In 2/3 of cases, ethnicity was not even collected. It says this means it is not possible to draw conclusions at a national level. At the same time, the report puts out this chilling official statistic. 4% Pakistanis were responsible for 64% cases of child sexual abuse in UK's Rotterdam alone. But the report also says that more effort is needed to see why it appears that perpetrators of Asian and Pakistani ethnicity are disproportionately represented in some areas. Her report recommends both a national police operation to review cases of child sexual exploitation not acted on, as well as a national inquiry. It says this would be overseen by an independent commission with full powers to compel witnesses to provide evidence and should be time limited and targeted. The inquiry would review cases of failures by local services to identify areas where investigations should be instigated. It would also coordinate a series of targeted local investigations. The report also recommends tightening the law in England and Wales so that adults who have sex with a child under 16 are always charged with rape, calling on society to see children as children. Despite the age of consent being 16, it says there are too many examples of child sexual exploitation cases being dropped or downgraded from rape to lesser charges, where a teenager has been quote-unquote in love with or quote-unquote consented to sex with the perpetrator. Most importantly, Casey's report recommends a review of criminal convictions of victims of child sexual abuse. Yes, you heard it right. So that victims convicted for child prostitution offences while the rapist got scot-free will have their convictions disregarded and their criminal records expunged. The UK government has accepted the recommendations. Listen to UK's Home Secretary.
So we will introduce new laws to protect children and support victims so they stop being blamed for the appalling crimes committed against them. New major police operations to pursue perpetrators and put them behind bars. New national inquiry to direct local investigations and hold institutions to account for past failures. New ethnicity data and research so we face up to the facts on exploitation and abuse. New action across children's services and other agencies to identify children at risk. And further action to support child victims and tackle the new forms of exploitation and abuse online. Taken together, this will mark the biggest programme of work ever pursued to root out the scourge of grooming gangs and child sexual exploitation.
Victims of the rape gangs are demanding accountability and justice.
I think all the political stuff needs to be put aside now. This needs to be focused on survivors, and the government need to do a lot of work to rebuild up trust from services and for the victims to be able to trust to come forward, to be able to open up and be able to engage in an inquiry.
It's important to note here that before the recent announcement of a national inquiry, the UK government had not conducted a full national statutory inquiry specifically focused on the rape gangs. But there were local inquiries and a broad 7-year national independent inquiry into child sexual abuse led by Professor Alexis Jay that touched on the rape gangs. But voices demanding accountability and justice never stopped since the first cases came to light. From whistleblowers to journalists and from activists to victims and their families, the clamour for justice could not be silenced for too long by vested interests or those in the system choosing to look the other way. One case in point is that of Stephen Yaxley Lennon, better known as Tommy Robinson, a 42-year-old British journalist, activist and a long-time vocal critic of the rape gangs. A documentary by him had detailed the extent of the abuse. His activism involved protests, public speeches and social media content aimed at raising awareness and pressuring authorities to act. In 2018, he was jailed in the UK for contempt of court after filming outside a trial involving a rape gang and broadcasting details on Facebook Live, which was seen as risking the collapse of the trial. He has since been released from prison in this case after a court reduced his 18-month-long sentence. The rape gangs scandal is a stain on the British state. While the announcement of a national inquiry is a positive step forward, the British state needs to do more, such as deporting such ringleaders of a Rochdale rape gang who cannot be deported because Pakistan refuses to take them back. It is unfathomable how there was a toxic combination of victim blaming and misguided political correctness. An apology by the British state is not enough. The cry of every victim needs to be heard. Every wrong must be undone, no matter what it takes. That's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We'll see you next week with more raging issues. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Munmun Bhattacharya signing off. Take care and stay safe.